Welcome back to the X Podcast. Sitting here at the long table.
Long table.
Not the
It's
food table.
actually kind of the normal table.
It's the normal table. Although that could shift soon.
Maybe.
We might be having a revamp.
Yeah.
We're going to change our name of our podcast to...
More or less.
Are we back there?
I'm more, you're less.
Okay. We
Just
need
kidding.
more brainstorming.
Yeah,
All
more.
right. But we're back. It's fun. We got a special guest, Mr. Jonah Wysong.
Hi there.
How are
Glad
you?
to
Get
be
up
on the podcast. Been a fan. So
Get up on the mic.
Yeah.
Long time
Make sure you're on
listener.
the mic. Yeah, lean into it.
I am a fan.
Oh,
This
well, we're glad.
is
Good to be here.
Well, this is one of the first families that I met when I moved here. Which is crazy. 2018 is coming up.
2018 's
September
not
20.
coming up.
No, I was gonna say September. I'm coming up on what would be
7 years.
7 years.
7
September
years.
2018. But I remember, like, shortly after I moved here, I was visiting Lithopolis before settling into Lancaster for a while, and you had told me all about him and Gwen, and so we connected, had me over for dinner, and then that next year had me over for Shabbat
Yeah.
for
Passover
the
meal.
official Passover meal. And
Seder meal.
Seder.
Seder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we combine
Seder and
Passover Seder with
With
Last
Sabbath.
Supper type, do
Yeah.
elements of communion in
Yeah.
it, so it's fun. Yeah.
And really integral part of our church body for those that are part of our church context. Really, I feel like you've been like the small groups, discipleship, men's. You and Gwen have just been such part of the glue, such
leading
sacrificial.
explorer.
Well, I mean, leading so
and
much
for new kind of people new to faith.
Yeah,
Just
just
always a fun.
some of the best people.
You should have brought some of the best questions you've ever gotten
Oh my
from
goodness.
Explorer. That would be amazing. What good questions from people brand new to faith.
There've been many. There
You
definitely
need
been
to
many.
you need to go
We'll-
back and write them down.
and then
Yeah.
we'll do
And
a
then
podcast
maybe kind of
on
feed them
that.
up like, hey, here's
But
questions.
you
That
know,
would be fun.
Honestly, when I meet somebody that is exploring faith or open or just
Yeah.
needs somebody in their life, like Jonah is one of the first people I
Yeah.
think of. Him
Yeah.
and Gwen are incredible. I do have to tell you something, though. I did
doesn't sound
not
good.
tell you this before.
Uh-oh.
That's always.
Well, I didn't want to make you feel bad. At the end of last summer, your dog ate my backpack.
Well, this seems like a common thing for this dog. After you said the dog ate his
I
razor.
totally forgot until you brought it up offline that I dog sat for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Was it last summer?
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was over a year. It was a year ago at least.
Yeah, I think it was last
Yeah.
year. It was last
It
year.
was
Yeah.
last year, and yeah, my favorite Russ Moore story is
Okay.
connected to that. So
Oh, I know where you're going. Okay.
yeah, so we are, getting close to the date, and I'm like, you need to come and spend some time with the dogs and get acquainted with our dogs here, because the one can be, she's been known to nip at a couple people. So
Oh, I had people warn me.
You mean nip at
yeah.
every person?
Well, not every person,
Okay.
but a couple people. And so we wanted to have you over, and we definitely finally worked something out like a couple nights before we left, I think. And you came over, and I started off letting you throw the Frisbee with Lola, our German Shepherd. She's the big one.
She's big.
And then Millie, we go in the house, and his face when he sees Millie in a diaper was priceless.
Okay.
Was she
So-
in heat?
She was in heat.
Yeah, he's probably never
So
seen that before.
I thought something odd was coming for a variety of reasons, and then I see. Okay, what kind of dog is Millie?
She's a basset hound.
There's a basset hound. This sad-eyed little basset hound waddling around with a diaper on, and I thought, oh my God, there is a dog that's gonna bite and eat my trachea, and then and he goes, now I have to tell you, and I still thought this was a prank. I was like, dear God, this isn't real. This is not real life. And and he goes, no, and they're so sweet about the dog. It's like, Millie, she's older, she has some problems, but she's also in heat right now. And I was like, this isn't
Never
real. This isn't real.
fixed, huh?
And then I looked over and I saw
Actually, she's not
stacks
that old.
of was she not?
No, she's older.
She's 3.
Oh, well, she seemed confused a lot. I saw stacks of dog diapers in the corner, which who knew that was a thing? And I was like, wait, they've gone all out for this prank. I left that night thinking this is still a prank, and then I realized, oh, this is not a prank.
No.
And these dogs, they are precious, very needy.
Yeah.
Lola loves. I've never seen a dog so happy about a water spigot. Loves a water spigot. Loves her frisbee. But they're sweet dogs.
Yeah.
They're very sweet dogs.
Yeah.
I just
And
thought I'd tell
they love their Uncle Russ.
They do love me.
They haven't seen him in a while, so
Oh.
You know.
they come out and visit sometime.
I'll have to do that. You know, it's funny. One of those nights I went to the Roosters like 10 minutes away in Circleville, and the moment I walked in, I heard like 6 people, Pastor Russ, and I was like, what is happening? I don't know if it was you or who, but somebody invited. There's this whole crew of people in Circleville, and they all work at the Roosters there. They come to our church and drive all the way and love it.
It's cool.
But it's very cool. But we love the Wysongs. They're amazing, and been listening to the podcast forever. But you brought up a topic that really has been hot button in our culture the last, I don't know, couple years.
2, 3 years, maybe.
3 years.
Pretty popular.
And that is, why don't you take us into it?
Sure. It's a group of medications that are, and I'm a pharmacist.
Well, I was going to say, we should probably
Yeah.
explain why this matters to you. You're a pharmacist who works for the devil.
Yeah, well,
That's what you said.
I work for
You don't have to say who, but you
Yeah,
work for an
a
insurance company.
Insurance company,
Legion.
basically,
Yeah.
that has a mail order pharmacy. So my job is being on the phones, counseling people on their medications most of the time. But I get so many calls every day specifically about these medications for one reason or another. Sometimes it's just, about shipping it. They're concerned because it has to be kept refrigerated. A lot of times it's because the insurance won't pay for it or cover it.
Well, let's explain what medications, because we didn't say that.
Yeah. These are medications.
Ozempic, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it Ozempic? Isn't that their
Wait, is that them?
Ozempic?
Ozempic is one.
Ozempic's one
No,
of
no,
them.
no, but
the jingle.
that jingle? That's the
I don't think that's the
Okay,
right
Okay, I
jingle.
was like,
no, I was just screwing with it. That was
very
that's
oddly familiar. I think that's it.
It's which one is that? I was just singing it with Ozempic.
Yeah,
What
that
is the
was
one?
very weird, but it worked.
Yeah, I know, but it's not.
The drugs are out of the class called GLP-1 receptor
GLP-1.
agonists, or
thought that was
often
it.
just referred to as GLP-1s.
Yeah.
GLP-1, the exception dragon. Is that what you said?
Yeah, Imagine Dragon.
Okay, Imagine,
The Imagine
so we have
Dragon.
the GSL, Imagine Dragon. And then that became... what?
So that-
What?
Those drugs came on the market originally as diabetes
Right.
drugs. The first one came out in 2005. It was called Byetta, and it was actually a twice-a-day injection. The latest ones that are out that have become very popular are weekly injections. That's your Ozempic.
Is that Ozempic's weekly?
Ozempic is
Wegovy, I've heard of.
Wegovy.
What else? What are some of the other ones?
Manjaro.
Those are the 3 I've heard.
Zepbound.
Never heard that one.
So,
Alps. So when did Ozempic and these began to be used? I mean, at first, was it almost like by mistake that people, would they say in the pharmaceutical world that at first would they call this abuse? Like some people are abusing these. And then at what point did they become normalized for weight loss?
Right. So I would say, you noticed it at the beginning with the Byettas.
Yeah.
People would lose weight while they were getting their diabetes treated.
Yeah.
And so then, years down the road when Ozempic came out, it was the first of kind of that new generation that became very popular. And again, it was a diabetes drug. It was used for diabetes, but again, people would recognize that they were losing weight while they were taking the drug. And so obviously these drug companies wanted to capitalize on that, and let's get FDA approval for weight loss.
Yeah.
Because other meds have FDA approvals for weight loss, not as effective as these drugs, but so yeah.
So what year was Ozempic FDA approved and began to be marketed?
Those came out. Oh gosh, they're probably getting close to being off patent now.
I can look it up. I look it up while
Yeah,
you're.
look it up. Ozempic was the first of those, and let me guess. Let me see if I can guess. Let's see. 2015, 12. Am I too?
Says, well, AI says that Ozempic, initially approved for diabetes, gained recognition. So it's hard to, well, maybe it's hard to tell. Maybe initially approved for diabetes in 2017,
Okay, 2017.
but
okay.
it gained recognition for its weight loss benefits around 2021.
Right.
Okay,
right.
that makes sense.
Which
yeah,
makes sense.
It's about 3 years. 3 or
Yeah.
4 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, so those are. I mean, in these.
And hold on real
drugs-
quick.
go ahead.
Just for those who maybe aren't familiar with it, not that we are, you are, but we've obviously been around and seen people who use, know people that are taking it for a variety of reasons. The primary thing I've heard is that, and why it works so well for weight loss. So maybe you could speak to this if it's something else. One I heard is that it restricts your, doesn't it affect your like hunger? Isn't that part of what it does?
in a way.
But I mean, that might be the side
Yeah.
effect of what happens
Right.
inside. But I thought I heard that's
Yep.
one of the big things. You lose an appetite.
Yeah.
So you don't eat very much.
Yeah.
I heard somebody tell me it silences the food noise.
Yeah.
But that's the catchphrase. It silences the food noise.
Which I hear that phrase a lot in talking to customers that have been on it. They're-
Okay.
Especially if they've, I talk to a lot of people who've been on it and it was covered by their insurance before, but either restrictions got tighter or things, and now they can't take it. And it's like, well, it did so good at reducing the food noise is the term that I heard.
Wow.
It basically, the
well,
way
because
it
it's
does
expensive.
that. Huh?
Because it's expensive. From
Oh,
what I've
it's
heard.
Very,
Very.
very,
Yeah.
very expensive. These are very expensive drugs. At least in the U.S. they are.
Mm.
So
Maybe Donald Trump could fix that
maybe.
based on the video we heard.
But he'll speak soon.
Huh?
He'll speak soon.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We'll hear this.
Oh,
So basically, the drugs do three things in the body. They decrease a hormone called glucagon. They increase insulin secretion, decrease glucagon secretion, and those kind of have opposite effects. So when you get more glucagon, your body's like saying, "Okay, I've got plenty of sugar." Basically, when you get more sugar in your blood, you need more insulin to take care of the sugar. And then it also slows down the digestion. So that's
That may
where
be
you
where-
get. That's where you get the okay. I'm full, or I'm not ready to eat again. That's where you get the help with the weight loss. Usually, is that slowing down of the digestion.
now when you slow down the digestion, what is the effect of that on the body?
Well, first of all, sugar goes into the body slower, so you don't get those rapid increases with meals. So for diabetics, that's very helpful because again, these started as diabetic drugs. Other effects is mainly the feeling of fullness or not being hungry is probably the next most biggest effect. I don't know that there's a whole lot of. I mean, there's probably other effects that are connected.
Yeah, I just
that-
figured with it
those are the-
absorbing what nutrients it needs to from the food.
It's
How
just
would
a
that
slower
just?
process.
It's a slower process. so I
slower
don't know.
process, and it might allow more things to be absorbed.
That's what I'm wondering. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
good or bad.
It
Maybe
could
it could
be
be both.
So what are some of the side effects?
The main,
adverse.
Yeah, the main one that everybody pretty much kind of knows from is usually nausea.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, so that's why they always start you out at a low dose on these drugs, and you basically work your way up in dose. And that's mainly because of the nausea. It's odd that two of the other real popular side effects are diarrhea and constipation. Usually it's one or the other, and it's very odd. It's hard to pick which one might happen. So, but
I've heard headaches
either
too.
or. Headaches.
I've heard headaches as before.
Belching is common.
Really?
Like people get, just belch more regular than
To
normal.
change something in your gases with your stomach or something, maybe.
I'm guessing that's
Huh.
I've heard, like in some
Interesting.
extreme examples, like limbs will fall off.
Probably because, well, you know the commercials always say, and you can
Right.
possibly die.
And you can
Yeah.
possibly die.
Actually, I have talked to people though that have not gotten nauseous at all on it. Like
Really?
I have talked
Yeah.
to people that have experienced no side effects.
One of the things I thought we
Yeah.
could do here today to be fun is that Jonah brought some samples, and so we're going to take it, and we're going to see how we feel before the end of the
Yeah.
episode.
It sounds wise. What I think. So here's the thing. I try to be slow to speak on stuff that.
Yeah.
You know, I've not taken this. I have a lot of friends that have taken this.
Yeah.
We were talking beforehand. It shocks me every week. I'll find out another one of my friends like, oh yeah, I've been taking it. I don't even know why it's still taboo, but because I feel like everybody. I mean, I know that's an exaggeration, but it feels like a lot of people
Yeah.
are taking this, and a lot of my friends have taken it, and I don't really have a strong feeling either way. But I know as a pharmacist, I'm curious. For you to even bring it up, you must have thoughts on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I do.
take
As
us
far
into
as-
your inner conflict.
So, I think we commented earlier, like we're three guys talking about obesity, three guys that are fairly thin.
Yeah,
talking about
and
obesity,
you
right?
have
I'll
a
take that.
6-pack. He has an 8-pack.
Yeah, no.
Wouldn't that be nice?
But you know, the struggle I think a lot of times is, and insurance companies are, you know, when it comes to insurance is paying for this stuff, sometimes it's viewed this way too. Is it a cosmetic thing or is it a medical thing? Is it, you know, obviously there are some people who are obese who, you know, your typical, you know, diet, exercise just
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be working. They've tried that their
Yeah.
whole lives. They've tried it for
Yeah.
years, and it just isn't working for them. So, what this does is, you know, allow them to, you know, to again reduce the food noise, not eat as much, and lose weight, and as a result, you know.
So
people
why
view
is
it
that a
as-
bad thing?
I don't know.
Right? I
People
mean,
view it as cheating, I guess.
I think that's a
sometimes.
little bit. To me, that's got to be the stigma most people have that are against it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Is it's like, well, why don't you just work out and diet,
right.
and then you can do it?
Well, and that's
Right.
why I'm curious your thoughts on this. I mean, because I was thinking earlier today, you know, when we're talking about this, I think I don't ever want to minimize because everybody's struggles are so different.
Yeah.
You know, some people losing weight is like a lifelong
Yep.
battle, and they really struggle to get under control. And sometimes it's a thyroid issue. Sometimes it's just hereditary. It's just harder for them, or they're getting older,
Your age.
or or they have so much to lose that it's overwhelming, and it's almost like I've heard some people say this can be a jump start. It seems to me all other factors being equal. Again, this isn't like a moral thought. This is just like, to me, what would seem like wisdom is to approach these kind of things the way you would mental health medication, which is, it seems like, in an ideal world, the healthiest approach would be a holistic approach of, you know, if somebody's talking to me and they're struggling through depression or anxiety and they're talking about medication, you know, I'd obviously point them to a professional.
Right.
But personally, like, I would want to say, okay, what are the other factors before skipping to medication? You know,
Right.
you know, what's your? There's the spiritual component. There's the physical component. There's so much research about exercise and nutrition, how that can affect depression. There's all those other things to not skip to medication. But for a lot of people, especially if they're really in a rut, if they're really in a tough place, putting all those things together holistically, especially for a season, can be really helpful. I would think it would be healthy to approach this kind of thing the same way. Like if you're really struggling with your weight and you want to get that under control, let's start with nutrition.
Yeah.
Let's start with diet. If you're really struggling, you're like, no, I need a jump start. Then maybe, okay, what can we partner with as far as medication? Would you agree? Is that
I would definitely agree with that. That's, you know, always I feel like the first place to start is holistically. You know, when it comes to weight and normal people, there's two parts to that equation. There's what you take in and there's what you burn off, basically. And, you know, one of those two areas one or both of those areas you can work at, and a lot of times, and you can, you know, take off some weight. It's just, again, that's where you start. And, you know, if there's either genetic dispositions or
Yeah.
whatever that lead to just not being able to get that weight off, you know, sometimes there are eating disorders too.
Sure.
You know, people have food addictions and eating disorders connected to food. So
I think
Yeah.
food addiction's probably an under, I would say, mentioned thing. Like we talk about addictions with all kinds of substances, but food addiction never falls into that category. Whereas it probably a way bigger issue than we ever give it credit.
Right.
Like just, you know what I mean? Hungry, eating
Yeah.
a lot all the time, hungry all the time, maybe for a variety of reasons. I mean, well, heart disease, I think, is #1 killer in the U.S.
Yeah.
So,
You mentioned, I thought that was interesting. You mentioned, health versus cosmetics, because that makes sense. That's what an insurance company would look at. Is this cosmetic or is this health? Which it seems like that's like a motive thing that would almost be impossible to ascertain.
Right.
I mean, because I do get it. If it seems like someone's skipping straight to that, and they don't seem to have an interest in exercise, and they're physically capable of exercise,
Right.
it would seem like it would, an insurance company could look at that and say, okay, like you're not really interested in holistically getting healthy.
Right.
But at the same time, if someone is morbidly overweight and maybe it's hard for them to exercise, and it's just like, look, like me weighing 50 to 100 pounds less pretty quickly would be helpful to my heart and my organs, then,
Right. And since we're moving into the insurance topic, another thing to distinguish too is that there are some of these meds that are, again, and some of them are the same meds. So for instance, I'll just use the example of Ozempic that you mentioned and Wegovy. They're literally the same medication. They're both, the active ingredient in both is semaglutide. Same thing with Mounjaro and Zepbound. They're literally the same medication. It's just one is marketed and used for diabetes, and one is marketed and used for weight loss. And insurances will cover differently for the different medications. So, like the rules will be different. Like a lot of these drugs, it's gotten to the point where insurances won't just automatically pay for them, period, any of them. They will oftentimes, like it started out that way, I think, when it was all just diabetes.
Right.
Sometimes there would be requirements to try lower cost medications first, but some plans would just outcover some of them. But a lot of plans have gotten more and more restrictive as far as, okay, the weight loss, or the diabetes medications, you've got to, first of all, your doctor's got to tell us you're diabetic. We're not just going to pay for it outright.
Right.
You got to be diabetic. Type 2, not just pre-diabetes in a lot of cases. So you got to be fully type 2 diabetic, and you also oftentimes have to have tried lower cost options. Like metformin is probably, the first drug they're always going to try to put you on coming, when you're diagnosed, either newly diagnosed diabetes or pre-diabetic. So. But
so from an insurance company's perspective, they would almost look like this should be primarily used for diabetes, and if it is, there should be a history of you tried this medication, because this is the most expensive
for the drugs.
But there's probably patients going to doctors who have that and go, "Can I get this shot?"
Yeah,
because the guy can lose weight too.
Yeah. So for the diabetes drugs, that's usually the criteria that insurance companies will require. For when they're being used for weight loss, you usually don't want to try for one of those drugs. You usually go for one of the other drugs. Like if you try for an Ozempic, you're going to get denied if you're not diabetic in a lot of cases. But if you go, so what's a trend now, though, I see it even more this year than last year. A trend is companies are not. So the providers of the insurance, whoever provides an employer, for instance, is when they go to purchase the insurance plans, the plans that include weight loss, and it's strictly because of these meds, the plans that include weight loss are viewed as optional. And you can pay less for your insurance as a company if you don't include weight loss.
So it's going to start. This is what you're saying is kind of a trickle up effect almost because of maybe its popularity and what's happening, that it's going to affect employers.
Yes.
Like them picking
Oh, yeah.
insurance. If you got people who want that option or on there, then they're going to charge the employers, or their share is going to be higher. The premium's going to be higher, so that
Premiums,
means their share is
yep.
going to be higher, and probably so will all the. Here's the other thing. So what that means is not just the employer share is going to be higher, but probably the employee share is going to be higher.
Probably.
So you may not be taking this, but if other people at work are wanting it and they're picking that plan, then you're going to pay a higher insurance premium, even
Right.
if you're not taking it.
Right. That
So
can
this
be
has
the case.
far-reaching effects of what.
Yeah.
This is
absolutely.
not a cheap drug. Now, if I wanted to take it, and I'm on a Christian healthcare savings thing, so it doesn't pay for medications anyways. So if I am coming to you and I need GoodRx, which I looked it up
Yeah.
because I was just curious how much it costs on GoodRx,
Yeah.
which sometimes is pretty good if the pharmacies will use it. It's expensive. It was almost $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
For Ozempic on any
That's-
plan. Costco, Discount Drug Mart, Kroger, $967, $982, $995
That's about the going.
Is that the going rate?
cost. Yeah.
per month.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is it? A shot every day? How often do you, or a shot every week?
No, shot every
month?
week on the newer ones. So
Okay.
like, yeah, there's some that are older, and there's only one that's an oral medication, and it's daily. It's called Ribelsis. It's actually got the same ingredient that's in Ozempic, but in a pill.
Not
It's
as
as effective.
Yeah.
Not as effective in either either in diabetes or
What's
in
it
weight
cost?
loss.
Let me look it up.
Ribelsis.
Okay, yeah. It's easy for you to say.
RYBELSUS.
RYBEL Ribelsis.
So
Tablet, 7 milligram. Is that appropriate dosage?
Yeah.
What is it? If I
mean,
take
that's
7
the
milligrams?
middle- That's the middle strength.
Okay. More options. It's the same price.
Yeah.
Well,
It's $975 a month for the pills.
here's the thing. We need to really
Just
think through international prices, and there's somebody that has some thoughts that I want to share just for a
Oh my
second.
goodness.
Yes.
Here we go.
I mean, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman, seriously overweight, and he takes the fat shot.
The fat
drug. And he called me up, and he said, President, he calls me, he used to call me Donald, now he calls me President, so that's nice respect. But he's a rough guy, smart guy. Very successful, very rich. I wouldn't even know how we would know this, but because he's got comments. President, could I ask you a question? What? I'm in London, and I just paid for this damn fat drug I
Wait,
take.
but
I
you
said,
already-
It's not working. He said, I just paid $88. And in New York, I pay $1,300. What the hell is going on?
So
He said, so I checked.
that's
So can you go back and beep out a couple words?
I
there?
don't know. It's all- you know what?
Whatever.
Sometimes you don't filter the president.
Yeah,
It is
He
what
doesn't
it,
have a
it-
filter,
it
that's
is
for
what he
sure.
said. What he says is what he says. So
and if you've not heard those words before, then
that,
don't write.
I didn't
And if
hear
you
it
have
until
heard
you
those
just
words,
played that. It was,
don't write.
yeah.
So let me ask you,
Yes, he said a
Jonah,
bad
in the
word.
words of
Let me-
Donald Trump, what the is happening? Why are they so expensive?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Why is this drug so much? Has it always been? Or did they double or triple their price when it got popular?
Everything keeps going up. All drug costs are going up. All healthcare costs in general are going up. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, obviously, drug companies are making money on the drug. I guarantee you that.
They're
So
probably making a killing, right? Because
they probably are. And then you've got it's just the system, and this is this is where the working for the devil came in.
yeah.
You know, insurance companies, obviously, you know, they employ people, they have to pay their people, so, you know, there's a cost to insurance too that also just raises up the cost. You know, doctors are making more. Everybody's making more. The cost
Yeah.
in healthcare in general is just
Yeah.
skyrocketing. So.
Another dumb question. Probably sometimes for these episodes would help to prepare. I have not. I'm just leaning on your expertise. But is this a huge trend across the world, or just America? Like I would assume
Well,
if
that
it
guy
is,
bought it in UK.
Yeah.
Like I assume like Western European nations, but like
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious like over in the East or
Well, I
over
mean,
in South America, like.
Yeah, you probably have nations that don't have obesity is not as much
Yeah.
a problem,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm
Yeah.
guessing that in some of those areas it's not quite as popular.
My
but
guess is
my guess
diabetes is not as popular either.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
probably.
I'm sure they go
True.
hand in hand a little bit.
we have
other than
Western
genetic.
medicine for Western problems.
Other than
Yeah. I would assume that, and I haven't really looked into it that much, but I would assume it's more Western culture where
Yeah.
people eat basically whatever they want to eat usually.
Yeah.
processed foods.
And if you're
such.
thinking next time we'll have somebody on here that takes Ozempic, we'll do that. Well, again, some of my friends take it, so
Yeah.
I think
It's not. Most people aren't. Would you say this? I think most people who take it, a lot of people I know that have told me don't seem embarrassed about taking it.
But they don't seem embarrassed, but they also don't broadcast it.
Yes, I guess that's what I'd say.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
kind of one of those things that you maybe, especially if you're taking it for what you said, insurance companies would say the more cosmetic reason than a medical reason.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think. I mean, I don't know. So I heard this. I have like mixed feelings about these, me personally, and it's okay. It doesn't really matter, but we all have personal opinions. That's kind of what we talk about a lot of times on there anyway.
Right.
So personal opinions on it. And coming from my wife's perspective, who has been in the medical field for a long time, she would be opposed to, not necessarily in general, so I don't want to put words in her mouth, but
Right.
we were kind of just talking about it, just kind of joking after, we'd been eating really poorly and traveled a lot. And I was like, man, I wish I could take the shot. You know what I mean? Like, I'm having a hard time losing this weight here. And more of a just kind of a joke. And then she, I said something. She would never take it for medical reasons. But that's also because, and this is something I don't think it's often talked about, is just, and I wonder how much this is happening. She wouldn't take it just because she has an autoimmune disease that affects her
Right.
digestive
Right.
system. So she's like, the last thing I would ever want to do is
with that.
mess with something that I'm already dealing with it. And she's been taking a medication that she has to have every 8 weeks through IV for it,
Yeah.
for 17, 18 years.
And luckily,
And
if you're diabetic and you have to take other things, there's other options.
Right.
So
And so I don't know that. I was like, I guess part of me is like, if this helps you, and I think the challenge is there's varying degrees of, yes, we have some medical percentages or things to define obesity.
right.
But then you also have people who just feel a little bit overweight that maybe aren't obese that want to take it because harder to lose weight, you get older, all those things.
Right.
I'm not really against it. I do think, though, there should be consideration, and I think that there's a lot, I want to say this, there's a lot of young people that are taking it that, and when I say young, because it does make a difference. The older you get, your body changes, your hormonal situation changes, it gets your metabolism changes, it gets way harder to lose weight the older you get.
I told you this weekend I got a decent amount of exercise.
Yeah, you
and I gained weight.
You ran a half marathon and gained weight.
Yeah.
And so it's those things are factors, but I'm talking younger people that are, I'd say, fairly maybe healthy otherwise, but still want it for cosmetic reasons. I don't know if they give enough thought to anytime you introduce something like that. It's like, well, the side effects don't bother me. It's like you are still changing things inside your body.
Right.
I mean, and we don't know long term, right? I mean, that's a
Nobody
big question.
knows
Long-term effect.
long-term effects of these medications. If you're taking now, and it's still kind of debatable whether you should be taking it long-term for weight loss or should you lose the weight
Right.
and then get off of it is what, so that's
Well, because you would think, again, in an ideal world,
Right.
you think if there is a medical professional that's guiding somebody along, they'd be encouraging them towards exercise
Right.
and sustainable eating patterns.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And that's probably the goal with most weight loss
Yeah.
medications is lose your weight and try to maintain through better practices. Hopefully, you know, you've been accustomed to eating less, and you know,
Yeah.
but then if I guess the food noise returns.
I'm going to say what I was told not to say. I talked to somebody today, actually, before this, and it was another person that was like, told me that people that I would not have guessed it are on it, and was telling this person the other day was telling me they had tried it at one point, and they mentioned the food noise thing, and I said, man, I would never ever want to silence my food noise. I said, to me, that's one of the greatest joys of being alive. And he said, this person said, Russ, I'm just going to be honest with you. Don't ever say that out loud. They said, you are a weird exception. I was like, yeah, I would rather run 5 miles and then eat a pizza over the sink like a rat at 10 p.m. I
also think that it's really hard to. I don't have any judgment for anybody because I think there's people who that weight is a struggle.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've been pretty fortunate most of my life that, like, I mean, I think I graduated high school and I was like 145 pounds.
You have the
maybe.
metabolism of a jackrabbit.
So it's catching up. It's slowed down big time. It's getting way harder.
Yeah.
Way harder. But but I also know there's people that even from young age that
Yep.
it has just been a lifelong struggle.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I mean, I put it maybe in the same category as getting gastric bypass.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as extreme as
Yeah.
gastric bypass or a surgery or the band, but I have family members that have done that, and it's been, I would say, life-saving for them.
Yep.
It would have been really bad for them probably at this age if they hadn't.
That's the preface I try to give in the beginning, is that everybody's struggle is so different.
Yeah.
And so it's so easy for anybody that's not been their struggle.
Right.
And so I say it tongue-in-cheek, but honestly, if that can be the dynamite to blow up the bridge and get the momentum going,
Yeah.
especially if someone really feels stuck. To me, that seems like the best place for this is if someone feels stuck,
Right.
and it can get them unstuck.
Right.
And for only $1,000 a month.
Yeah. Now there are, you know, like I said, there's
a lot.
insurance plans that won't cover it at all, and so you know, some employers or whatever insurance plans through those employers just don't cover it at all, and those people, if they're not diabetic, type 2 again.
Yeah.
There's no options other than, like, there are, you know, I think we talked
I think
about.
you call Canada.
Well, there's we talked about
That's
the
what I would do.
clinics. There are some weight loss clinics.
Well, I've heard of
things like
clinics.
that.
I've heard of clinics. I know one. I don't remember the exact name of it. Where someone, you know, told me where they went to get it. So you don't have to go to your doctor.
Right.
They'll, I would say, pretty easily write you a script for it.
Yeah.
They'll even
And
often supply the
they'll-
med through a related. So this is a thing where they compound these meds.
Okay.
They actually, so like you can get semaglutide, which is your Ozempic Wegovy, tirzepatide, which is your Mounjaro Zepbound. You can get those compounded, usually at a fraction of the cost of the.
So
of
cheaper to have them both in there,
The,
or is it a portion of each?
Yeah,
Is
you
it
would.
a
So Ozempic is one drug.
Yeah.
You know, Ozempic and Wegovy are the same
Right.
drug, same active.
But you said
ingredient.
you could get those two compounded.
Well, not together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's what I thought. I was
separate.
like, wow, double the benefit,
Yeah, no,
right?
it's
Let's.
compounded semaglutide, compounded
Oh, okay.
tirzepatide.
I got you. I
Joe,
wasn't following you.
When you write the
Yeah.
prescription for this, do you ever write in there fat shot
He doesn't
Yeah,
write
I-
prescriptions. He fills them.
when you
Yeah.
fill it? Okay, okay.
Yeah.
They
You
don't, I don't think any doctors put that in. That's
They don't put
Yeah.
that in. Okay.
I don't think fat shots are.
That's not. Okay.
Ever
that-
come
that-
across
that's only Donald Trump.
that's not a medical term.
Okay.
not a medical term.
So
So-
it is fascinating how it's
Yeah.
affecting. I would say, you said your company,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that isn't your company opening a whole new. You were saying
They're,
that.
they're opening a whole new unit that's
Just
a
for
new
fat shots.
pharmacy just for these drugs.
Drugs, I mean.
basically. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'll be.
That's how popular
working,
they've gotten,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
So when
Absolutely.
what do you predict? Okay, the popularity of these, and maybe it'll be a fad, but I'd say anything that actually works to help people lose weight is not going to be a fad. Like, it'll be here to stay.
If it works.
If it works, it's going to be here to stay, right? In your prognostication techniques that you have of like Nostradamus,
I was
you
going to
can
say,
kind
that's
of
the Nostradamus.
yeah,
throw right
he's
there.
got a little bit of like Nostradamus in him. So, what would you say from your perspective is the UC is like, what's the crossroads we're coming to? Because this is going to, these kind of things just compound, as we've been talking about, and insurance companies, they don't like to pay for it.
Right.
It's, the drug is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, more and more people want it.
Right.
What's going to happen?
Well, I mean, it's been happening, and like, I'll just go back in time just a bit when the latest drug came out, Zepbound. So the company that makes Zepbound also makes, again, Mounjaro. They also make other drugs in the same category. When Zepbound came out, all of a sudden, and there will be more drugs probably that come out, and this will probably happen again, but like, there were massive shortages, first of all. So like, they were dividing their same resources that they were using to make Mounjaro only, now divided between Mounjaro and Zepbound.
Okay.
All this new group of people could now take the drug because it's approved for weight loss, and the company had limited resources, so they're trying to get that drug out, and there's shortages on the Mounjaro, which is for the diabetes people, and you know, so drug shortages has been kind of what's happened.
That makes sense.
To this point. Moving forward, though, obviously they're gonna write that. They have righted that ship.
Oh, they're going to increase manufacturing big time.
Oh,
This is
yeah,
like
yeah.
printing gold, printing
They
checks.
built new plants.
Oh,
I think
my
is what I think
gosh.
they've done. So they put, you know, they fixed that problem, but you know, it's
like
just
striking
it's gonna
oil.
continue to grow.
I mean, if you're a pharmaceutical company,
Yeah.
I wonder if even all of their R&D and their stuff, like we're trying to create this drug and this drug for needs, I wonder if all of them are doing it hoping that they're going to strike
I'm
oil.
sure a
with
lot
one.
of
You know what I
them.
mean? Like all of a sudden one of these takes off,
Yeah.
and now you're, whew.
I'm sure a lot of
I
them.
think
Wow.
if we had more time, maybe another episode, another time, because I started debating with him this morning. Just I think there's a fascinating conversation between Western approach to healthcare and Eastern, or
Yeah.
even holistic,
Yeah.
or even I think we've talked about this because I would assume you're not a big fan of chiropractic care.
I'm actually seeing a chiropractor.
Whoa! Hold on a second. Hold on a
See?
second.
Look at you.
All right,
Let
but
eat your
I
words
have-
because you have told me this.
I call them quacker
Oh,
crackers.
I thought because okay,
Quacker crackers.
I remember because I feel like a few years ago we had this conversation and
Yeah, I
Things have
have
changed.
not traditionally been a fan of them. I am trying this
Oh.
out
You don't-
because of my recent.
you don't reach out to God till you need him.
I
I've watched a few videos. If you want me to try to crack your neck for you, I'd be happy to
Yeah.
for free.
oh,
Oh, I can crack some backs, but
yeah.
Oh my.
this would be a good conversation because it was so funny. I was
Yeah.
talking to him about this morning, and not to put you on blast, it's funny.
Hmm.
Patch Tim, when Patch Tim's brilliant in such a professor mode,
Yeah.
and we're talking about all this, and he goes, "Well, I think the reason is because there's the scientific method hadn't been." And I was like, "Okay, that's the exact point I'm making." The East does not accept anything, or the West does not typically accept anything from the East if you can't break it down under a microscope.
Yeah.
And it's such a different philosophical. Because you probably heard me tell the stories, like, the nerdy side of me growing up in middle school that got super into martial arts, which everything in the East is connected, which got me into, the meridians and the chi and the ki and all that, and Tai Chi and all the Eastern healthcare. And then I'm visiting, China a few years ago.
Yeah.
And they're going through all the thousands of years of learned. Some of it you probably still can't
Yeah.
take through the scientific process, but it works. And
Acupuncture.
acupressure, the 26 meridians, and
Yeah.
I learned in Beijing because of China's population issues that to see a doctor you have to be put on a waiting list for about a month and a half, and then when you go in, you have about a minute and a half, and they will literally, unless something's crazy wrong, they will do two things. They will feel your pulse. They believe you have 26 pulses. Well, three things. Then they'll look in your eyes. Their biggest thing is they'll look at your tongue, and they'll tell you what's wrong with you in a minute and a half. Rarely even draw blood. And she's telling us all this, and I think I've told this story from platform, but they take us to the Chinese Institute, and they say whoever wants to, we'll have a doctor come around with an interpreter. And of course, I've always had lower back issues, and the year before I had blood work done, and they said you need to get your kidneys checked out or something. So anyways, doctor comes around, and I mean literally comes around with an interpreter, feels my pulse for 5 seconds, looks at my tongue, and through the interpreter says you have lower back issues and you have kidney issues and you get them checked out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and there's all these stories
Palm
of like,
reading works too.
you know, but you have the whole half of the world very
Yeah.
intelligent,
Yeah.
educated in their own way, thousands of years of practice to back up a lot of their stuff. But it seems like I told him, I said, it feels like the Calvinists and the Arminians, they won't learn from each other. Yeah, I feel like there's so much. I mean, even in the U.S., not to get all, controversial, because I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but it is interesting, especially in the U.S., that not saying we shouldn't have pushed vaccines for a moment, but the biggest thing that put people at risk, there was no, like, big announcement from the health professionals talking about the major things of lose weight, diet, exercise, be healthy. Like the government, the health officials, nobody said anything about some of the most important stuff. It was just, let's skip ahead to hit the symptoms or hit the, whatever. And I was just curious. I'm putting you on the spot, but
Yeah, it's okay.
what you, I don't know, if you think about this kind of stuff, or if you feel like, no, like there's a reason I have this lens, or I don't even want to assume what your lens is, but
people who people assume because I'm a pharmacist that I'm all for drugs and big pharma, whatever. But I mean, I do like holistic approaches. So I am very, in fact, most of the time with myself, and if I'm talking to someone that I care about or something, I'm usually steering holistic first. I mean, I'll probably never go on one of these drugs because, hopefully not. Like now I am pre-diabetic now, so, or at least I was diagnosed about a year ago.
oh wow.
Pre-diabetes, but I've, I learned that American diet's terrible.
Yeah.
It is. It's bad. So
It's the SAD diet, right? Standard American diet.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, dude, do you fix this chair so that
They're all
drops?
they're all going
they're
crazy.
They're called
Like,
they're called fun
shouldn't
chairs.
I shouldn't be lower than
Yeah, you are.
Russ.
They're fun chairs.
Yeah, this one just
They
keeps
just kinda drop.
dropping.
Yes, that's
It
a fun chair.
Yeah. So anyway, but no, I very am in favor of holistic stuff. I mean, again, I am going to a quacker cracker. I can't even say
Does he
it, but
appreciate that, or
Yeah, he
Yeah.
probably.
She-
She.
she appreciate that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is she gonna crack your back?
I don't know if she listens to this podcast. So
It'd be pretty funny if she did, though. Well.
anyway, so but yeah, no, I'm in favor of holistic measures. Like herbals and things like that do work in a lot of cases. So
His big thing is essential oils.
Oh my god.
That's his favorite.
essential oils.
Yeah, he rubs them on his temples
If
every
you
day.
can't tell, he just pulled a Russ.
What are you talking about? He said peppermint oil is his favorite. He puts it behind his ear every day.
Now, honestly,
And he
a
never has a
peppermint
headache.
bomb will clear your sinuses.
Yeah.
That's about all it'll do. But
Oh.
I went to church, a previous church with someone. He's passed away. God bless his soul. But
Didn't work.
he was a good person, but he was very into the oils. And, yeah, peppermint oil cured everything. I think so. Or yeah.
there you go.
Well, interesting stuff. Well, thanks for coming and just.
Yeah.
It was something we were talking about, and you obviously are filling lots of scripts for this, and figured
very
you'd
much.
have a thought or perspective on it. So, thanks for informing. We just got to inform some people if they weren't really sure about what's behind it. So,
Very much pleasure.
next time you come, bring a couple shots with you, and we can test it out on here. Absolutely.
We'll do it. All right. Write us in. Only if you have something good to say. Until then, we will see you next time. Until next week. Hey guys, it's Russ. Thanks so much for listening. We really believe if we can get around tables instead of behind screens, if we can talk to each other instead of at each other, we can make the world better. To help us do that, here are a few things you can do to help. First, if you haven't yet, leave a review on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe on YouTube. This helps more than you know. Also, if you have been impacted by the community out of which this podcast comes, that's X Church, Maybe you're local or you've been touched by the messages and impact across the country, even the world. I want to encourage you to support this work. A powerful life principle is to invest in the people and places that invest in you. And so I want to invite you to do that right now by going to thex.church/give. You can give a one-time small gift, a sacrificial gift, or even become a recurring partner. Together, let's keep elevating the conversation, thinking higher, loving deeper, and making the world better. Cheers.